So, an interesting connection between the films that are its contemporaries, the prequel trilogy. If we jump ahead, I suppose if 2005 was episode 3, we jump ahead approximately a decade. I'm pretty sure episode 7 was 2016. It was certainly around that.
Yeah.
So about a decade later. So Disney now owns Star Wars, and by this point had already been pumping out some of the Marvel movies from memory. I think we're on to about Avengers 2 by then, something.
Yeah, it'd be a few years before Infinity War would come out, so they'd be in whatever phase that are.
Yeah, I'm going to say phase 3, but
my Marvel brain has turned to mush.
I think mine did before phase 3,
yeah.
frankly. But just for context, so Disney, the idea of them buying Star Wars was not unusual at this point, buying properties.
No, that's what their business model has been, basically.
Quite a while.
For a couple of decades.
They are not a creative entity. They are a corporation that buys and exploits intellectual properties.
Galactus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Appropriately. Yes.
Yeah.
So when the first film comes out, I did this entirely unique thing and rewatched the 6 movies leading up to it. I'm sure no one else did that.
Oh, yeah.
And it was interesting revisiting them all, but which I say that's probably when I watched the original versions of the original trilogy, not the special editions, for a long time.
Yeah.
And that's sort of even though I haven't watched them again since, don't plan on doing it, but that really re-instilled some respect for those original films.
Yeah.
Prequels were also there. Episode 7 came out, was a big hit.
How were you feeling before episode 7 came out? What were your...
I was thinking it'll be nice to see this. And by the time I finished, I went, that was nice, and I don't care if I ever see Star Wars again.
Really?
So I went in there with actually many films like that, like when several franchises were, the first Alien film out for however many years, or the first, and I go, yeah, it'd be nice to see one more of those. That was my attitude going in.
Yes.
And I came out saying,
that'll do. Sequel kind of mindset where it's like, it'll be nice to revisit that.
Yes.
Rather than I can't wait to see
what Disney does next. Yeah. That was not my attitude.
Not excited. Yeah, no. I can understand that.
Yeah. Where were you when it came out?
I was really excited because I really liked J.J. Abrams' Star Trek. I think he'd done 2 films. I didn't like the second one very much at all.
Yeah.
Into Darkness.
Then he did Beyond, I want to say.
No,
or is that someone else directed?
Someone else directed it.
Okay.
But he did the first 2 because he couldn't do the third one because he was on Star Wars duty.
Isn't that interesting that you have a Star Wars? My first thought when they said Abrams, I thought a Star Trek director.
He was always a Star Wars director directing Star Trek. Like that first Star Trek 2009. That's a Star Wars movie.
It is. And speaking of faster paced exposition and all this sort of stuff, and
it was all the better for it.
Yes.
It didn't have any of the plotting. I'm sorry, Gene Roddenberry fan. It didn't have any of the plotting, moralizing that Star Trek has, which is beautiful and I love it. But also, the clock's ticking, guys.
I think a really great kind of comparison. Someone had said this more eloquently and succinctly before, so through poor memory, I'll paraphrase.
Yeah.
But it was something like Star Trek is for, as in the original show, is for people who are engineers, who like to watch a show. Whereas Star Wars is for people who like to have fun, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's like, the Star Trek fans are like, show me the boring everyday stuff because that's what I want.
Yeah.
And Star Wars is space for people who don't care about the minutiae of how does this ship work or whatever.
Yeah.
And Star Trek under Abrams was making it not for the engineers. It was making it for let's have fun.
But, I mean, I said it earlier. Star Wars is fantasy.
Yes.
It's the Force is magic. It's got swords. It's got princesses. Whereas Star Trek is science fiction, and I don't think Star Trek 2009 broke that. There's nothing in there, well, maybe with the exception of the messing around they do with the teleporter. I know fans that didn't care for that particularly.
Okay.
But if you're doing teleportation, that's magic anyway.
Yes.
We can't do that.
Of course.
So it was not unfaithful to the source material, I feel. I think he did a good job. I think for all his sins, J.J. Abrams is a pretty savvy studio animal.
Yeah, and that's then appropriate that he would be in charge of what turned out to be 2 of the 3 Star Wars films.
Yes.
Not
I
the
think he's a
original plan.
chameleon, because he has a Mission Impossible under his belt as well. Mission Impossible 3 is his.
Oh, I'd forgotten that.
That is a pretty good recovery after Mission Impossible 2.
I completely agree. I remember some people didn't like the third one for some reason, and I thought it was
good.
It was all right.
It was a modest return. And then he had Super 8 as well, which is a really good... It's a Spielberg movie when Spielberg was not making Spielberg movies anymore.
Yes.
He's a chameleon. He can mirror what other... And that's exactly what you want for Star Wars.
Yeah.
And so, sorry, to answer your question from 10 minutes ago, how I was feeling about The Force Awakens before it was released, I was all aboard.
Okay.
I was really excited about J.J. Abrams taking over the helm. And he was very publicly forward-facing about what he saw the flaws of the prequel trilogy being, and he was going to correct them. So he wasn't in denial, being like, no, they're actually great movies. We all love Jar Jar, whatever. He was like, no, we've got puppets on set. And as a Jim Henson fan, I was like, oh, mate.
I remember that promotional material, and it was they didn't explicitly say, we're not going to be like the prequels, but they were basically
everything
saying,
but. They're look at me, I'm out in the desert, and these are puppets that I've got with me.
And that was definitely the best part of it. And I did the maths on it many years ago, which I won't do now off the top of my head, but it was something I worked out the time difference between episode 6 and 7, as in when they were made. So the original...
So from 2000 and...
Yeah, so from 83 to 2016, I think it was a greater time distance than between episode 3 and 4, but you feel like you could go from episode 6 to 7 and nothing has changed. It felt like it had the same tone, it had the same aesthetic look.
Absolutely.
Sharpest visual effects, as you would expect.
Yeah.
But the time difference, so it would have been... episode 3 would have been 2005 back to the original in 77, and you go from one to the next, and it's like walking into a brightly lit room from the dark.
Yeah.
You just go, oh, two completely different. My eyes hurt.
Antiseptic. It's
It's shocking, and what makes it worse is in episode 3 they start to replicate some of the sequences. And you go, but it looks all shiny and computery.
Too clean.
Yeah.
And his costume is too starched and it's too brightly lit.
Yes.
Because this is not real. This is a soundstage.
Yes. Whereas the original was, you could almost see them hammering up the sets just before they filmed. And so he gave it that nice, rough kind of look, which episode 6, I think, episode 7, the newest Disney film, the first Disney film, replicated very effectively.
I think as well, it was able to replicate the chemistry between the main cast, the principal cast.
Definitely.
They got so lucky, the 3 new leads.
Yeah.
Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, and Oscar Isaac are all incredibly charismatic actors. And Adam Driver as well. That is so, those, particularly Oscar Isaac, Adam Driver, they then, Star Wars was a stepping stone for them. They've gone on to do bigger and better things.
Yeah, Star Wars did not destroy their careers like it has done for some actors.
Yeah, they could have been Hayden Christensen, particularly Adam Driver. He could have been Hayden, but he's Harrison Ford instead. He's used Star Wars to launch himself into Oscar, Academy Award contention. These are big players in Hollywood, and they are genuine talents. There's no doubt about it. Absolutely. And so there's a lot going for episode 7. And it sets up a very interesting arc for
Ray.
Ray, it is Ray.
Yeah,
I was going to call it Daisy.
That's
not her name.
Or Mary,
Ray.
Or Mary Sue, some people say.
That last, the reveal in the last, the last few minutes, that she is the one who has, because it's kind of telegraphed that it's going to be Finn, the stormtrooper. It's going to be our Force sensitive, but he's not. He's our Han Solo in this trilogy. Which is brilliant. It's very subversive, which is what I was really excited about. I was like, we're getting 4/5 of Star Wars and then an extra 5th of this is new and exciting. And I was like, that's exactly what I want.
Speaking of new and studio interference, the second film...
go on. Tell me.
Yeah, so Rian Johnson steps in. I watched this, got the DVD from the local library or something. It was like, sure, whatever. It was on the shelf. So I wasn't going in with enthusiasm, but the part that made me sit up was when they replicate the original trilogy. So the original trilogy was first movie, Darth Vader. Then we introduce the Emperor. Then the Emperor is in the finale.
Yeah.
In Return of the Jedi. 1, 2, 3. Here we have, I'm trying to remember the character's name, Adam Driver's character's name.
Kylo Ren.
Kylo Ren, thank you.
We help each other out.
There you go.
Yeah.
Between the two of us, we have a functioning brain.
Yeah.
So Kylo Ren is Darth Vader. And in the background, there's Snoke, who's this Emperor-like figure.
We only see him by hologram, I think.
Yes.
Which is
replicating
very similar
the original
to
Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
And then here he is coming to the fore, and what Rian Johnson decides is, and he has revealed later that there was no grand plan, so I wouldn't mind betting they were thinking that Snoke would be the big bad guy.
Yeah.
In the third one, he says, let's kill him off early.
Yeah.
And then you have Kylo Ren saying, join me, but not to join the Empire. Let's do our own thing. I sat up and said, this is interesting.
It's so exciting. The Last Jedi is not just a good Star Wars movie. It's a good movie. There's parts of it that are not good.
Yes.
Like the entire Casino Planet thing is unnecessary.
Yeah.
But the larger plot beats in Last Jedi, that's maybe the first time Star Wars has been actually good since Empire Strikes Back.
I think you could be right, and interesting you say that because it is emulating Empire Strikes Back in the way it's subverting. It's a sequel that's subverting ideas, but then it still reverts to. I would have loved to seen those two go off together, and the third film is what's going to happen to them.
Yeah,
and instead they just kind of separate and go, no, well, you'll just take over as the new bad guy, and you'll be still here with the rebels, basically. And
even so, if that had been the path they went down, that would have been disappointing. But it's still new. There's a power vacuum there, and is Kylo Ren gonna? We're basically seeing like what would have happened after Return of the Jedi had Darth Vader lived.
Yeah.
There's a power vacuum. Is our bad guy going to ascend to power, and what does that mean for our hero protagonist?
Yeah.
Which is it's interesting.
Yes.
It's not the same story being retold, which is what like Star Wars has become.
Yes. And we should mention briefly, which started in 1983, because Return of the Jedi was emanating the original film.
Yes.
In some ways.
Yeah.
So let's start by bigger. Let's start on Tatooine. Let's start
There's a lot of that, and there's that famous. It's been memed to death. George Lucas during that the documentary that came with the Episode 1 DVD. The documentary.
It's like poetry at Ryan's.
Yeah, exactly the line I was thinking.
Yeah.
That's how he writes.
Yeah.
It's like I'll write 2 lines, and then I can repeat the first one after the second one, and it's like poetry. So you could do that.
Or
you
come up with something new.
Write more stuff, and then but no, Last Jedi, and it's such a fitting farewell to Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
He's not the Terminator.
No.
He's a pacifist. He's a peaceful, spiritual guy, and that's how he leaves.
Yeah.
That's so good. It's so smart. It's not what you'd expect.
No. As you say, definitely not a perfect film. I think for time I won't break into to the issues I have with the film, but I would say by easily the most interesting thing since the original trilogy that Star Wars has done.
Yeah.
Without question.
Yeah.
So let's briefly summarize the final film, Rise of Skywalker. They bring Abrams back, which was not the original plan.
No.
And then it feels like Disney said, here, do exactly this. Because it felt like he just got...
I think he got... Are we allowed to swear on here? I don't want to. No, I'll say he got handed a bad sandwich with that movie. Because, like, J.J. Abrams took over the directing duty for that one, I think shortly after... Last Jedi had been released, because Colin Trevorrow was the original pick by Disney. He was an actor who had... Nobody really knows why. He'd made a movie called Safety Not Guaranteed, which was pretty well regarded as a small budget science fiction movie that apparently Spielberg really liked. And that got him some buzz in the industry. And along with Johnson and Abrams, he was going to be the helm of this trilogy. And he had written a script. The script is called Duel of the Fates, which is like the track from Phantom Menace. So it was really trying to tie this entire 9-chapter saga together. And apparently that script is very good. It's online for people who want to read it, but like the Star Wars fan in me is long dead. So I'm not reading a script on a computer screen.
Fair enough.
But he gets turfed because he's being pinched to direct the Jurassic World movies, which, God bless, they're bad, but good on him.
They sure did make a lot of money.
They were certainly successful financial endeavors. Yes.
Well put.
But so he released this movie, and it was his pet passion project called The Book of Henry. And it is so poorly received that Disney get cold feet and they fire him from directing the third movie.
And I wonder if it's a combination because, as you say, this decision was made not long after episode 8 came out, and it was pretty divisive.
Yeah.
And it still turned pretty decent profit, quite a good profit actually, but it really seemed to split the fan base, and I think that might have been, I mean, that alone maybe wouldn't have done
There was lots of stuff going on at this time because Lord and Miller got fired from the Han Solo movie as well.
Yes,
and Ron Howard had to step in. And so I think Disney were getting very scared that their Star Wars movies were only making
most of the money, but not all of the money. Yeah.
So, and to make matters worse, Carrie Fisher dies during the filming of Rise of Skywalker. And in retrospect, like J.J. Abrams said, the way we planned out this trilogy was that, Force Awakens was going to be the farewell to Han Solo. That's his movie. He's the old hand saying goodbye to us, the audience. And then the middle is Luke Skywalker, and then the third is Princess Leia Organa, which you can't anticipate that the actress is going to die.
And she was the youngest of the three.
Yeah. So that's incredibly unlucky. I don't know what you do to fix that.
Sure.
But it's also not a good script. And that doesn't help.
Can we talk about escalation briefly here? Because we sort of mentioned it before, but I take it as if you look across the films from production, as in from 1977, you have a single Star Destroyer.
Yeah.
And in the second film, you have 6. And in the third film, you have something like 20. Yeah. So when you see that big reveal of, the fleet was hiding behind the moon and there's 20 Star Destroyers, we already know one of these things is insane. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And then we jump ahead to the final film, number 9, where, by the way, the Emperor's back, he just survived.
Somehow Palpatine has returned.
Sure, why not?
Maybe the worst, for all of George Lucas's problems writing the script, he never did anything as egregious as somehow Palpatine has returned.
You come back to something positive about George.
Yeah.
And then they say, and he just has a fleet of 100 Star Destroyers.
Who's flying them?
Plot devices to make it keep moving.
Ghosts.
Sure, why not? And then, but then a rebel fleet turns up and they have 1,000 ships.
Lando Calrissian's here.
With 1,000 ships.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting for, the Trade Federation to turn up with Infinity and 1 ships.
Yeah,
and just...
I've got a force field. This is my pet dinosaur that eats force fields. It's so silly.
I remember watching that going, again, it was probably just from the library shelf or something. I was just going, what is this? And
what is this?
I can even remember early on, I want to say by about the 20-minute mark, I was watching this with my wife. I paused it, turned to her and said, do you know where we are right now? And so, no, because they go through about 6 planets in no time at all. And they even hyperspace, I think, between 3, like 3 in a go. And then they fly into an entire new world, and we see Lando for the first time. They talk to him for about 20 seconds. They get on ship and fly out again. I'm just going, my head's spinning. I know I'm an old man now, and young people probably go, I want to see 46 things. But you go back to that original trilogy, or not just even that, just good movies don't need 12 locations. They need 1 or 2. Big things like your James Bond movies maybe go to 3 countries because they're big films and so on. But you can tell, I would argue, more effective films, but just tell one place and one person rather than 12 paper thin.
Well, at this time, the Guardians of the Galaxy movies were doing incredible numbers, and they had such a good sense of location and universe.
And characters, one core group.
Yeah. Who they stick together, they banter with each other, and I think that's the problem with the prequel trilogy is it's neglecting your heart.
Yes.
There's no emotional anchor in those movies. You know Anakin's going to go bad, and you also don't care because you don't like him. You've never liked him.
Yeah.
There's nothing. The most relatable character in those movies is Obi-Wan.
Definitely.
That's largely because Ewan McGregor is just a likable looking guy, and he plays a gentleman very well. And Obi-Wan Kenobi is a gentleman.
Yes.
I think the problem with Episode 9 in particular is neglecting your head.
Yeah.
There's so many plots in that you know are not going to pan out. Like Chewbacca is dead for 5 minutes in that movie. And there's a dagger with the location of the last holocron that is carved to reflect the side of the Death Star that crashed there 30. Like, none of this holds up to any screen. If you say this out loud to people, they're like, wait, what?
I mean, I've seen it, and even you saying that is hurting my brain.
There's so many plot threads that are just kind of like...
And you know how that happens? Generally, studio interference.
Yeah.
That's somebody saying, do this, make sure this is in it. Yeah, Lando's going to be there.
Yeah, we need Lando there.
We need a big
Harrison
space
Ford
battle
to come back because one of our old characters needs to tie this up.
Yeah, and he can't be bothered to even get a haircut for it, but whatever. So
Yeah.
obviously they had him for a day.
We've got to bring back the Knights of Ren because we've teased them for 2 movies now. We'll have them.
Oh
we'll
yeah,
have
that's
a
right.
desert shot, maybe drone footage, and then they come back and then they get killed. Like, there's so much.
Maybe if they planned ahead, and granted, yeah, as you say, they changed it because unfortunately Carrie Fisher died. But still, if there was a cohesive plan, I think that would have made a tremendous difference.
And I think that's the problem that's biting Disney in the bottom on every front at the moment.
By comparison, Warner Brothers with their DCEU.
Yeah.
I mean, is it just large corporations that create these things for money are always going to be, by their very nature, lacking the artistic understanding?
We can have the socialism conversation.
I'm not saying tear them all down. I'm saying
but like if you're one of those big studios or like a media conglomerate like Disney, it can't just be you've made a successful movie. You need to make a successful movie that promises the next movie will be more successful, or it's the launch pad for a dozen different series, which means nothing can ever end, nothing can wrap up, and the stakes can never be real because it's always feeding into something else.
Yeah, no one ever really dies in these franchises.
Yeah. I was thinking the end of Empire Strikes Back and Han Solo's in Carbonite. I mean, originally that was written that way because they weren't sure whether Harrison Ford was going to stick around. But you feel that dread and that tension, like he might not come back, he might be dead.
Well, they killed Obi-Wan in the previous film.
Yeah, you never get that sense in any of the prequels or the sequels. A character that we really like is in trouble. Even when Qui-Gon Jinn dies, I don't care.
That was probably the most emotion I felt in that entire trilogy, I would say.
Yeah.
Certainly, and that's a problem when it ends with our hero turning evil and slaughtering children.
Younglings.
And
we're not allowed to say
children. Sorry.
Younglings.
And choking out his wife. And we shouldn't be going, I remember 5 years ago watching a movie that had more emotional impact.
Yeah.
That's very problematic. As you say, the complete lack of pathos in the original trilogy, and not a lot of brains, but a lot of nostalgia. Oh, remember this? Oh, Palpatine's back, and of course, Episode 7 was almost a remake.
It knows the ingredients. It just doesn't
stir it and see what happens.
Well, and I would say it knows the ingredients, and for 2/3 of that trilogy, it had it pretty well right. It's just the third one where
it's catastrophic.
It's not. Yeah. When I turned 30, I had a Star Wars themed birthday party, like with costumes and all that sort of stuff. Like,
can I call you a nerd? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll allow
Says
it.
the man running a podcast talking about movies.
I'll allow it. So I was a big Star Wars fan, even though didn't really like the prequels that much, but I loved classic Star Wars. And,
sure.
I turned 30 while the sequel trilogies were being released. Mm-hmm. And I have not watched anything Star Wars since Rise of Skywalker. It killed it for me. All of a sudden, it's one of those things that's so bad it makes the things before it seem worse.
That's an interesting point. And yes, we best wrap up in a moment. But I should say the definition of a good prequel or sequel is one that enhances what came before it. The definition of a poor prequel or sequel is one that tarnishes everything that came before it. And the prequels have that impact on the originals to at least some extent.
Yeah, it makes Return of the Jedi seem a lot more, like the Ewoks seem a lot more calculated once you've seen how merchandise-driven the prequels are.
That's a good way of putting it. I'd like to finish on a positive.
Please.
Without George, there'd be many things we don't have in art and films in general. Without The Phantom Menace, we wouldn't have, including Jar Jar, we wouldn't have Gollum.
Absolutely. That's
So he was groundbreaking, even if the execution wasn't right, even if the fans didn't like it. Poor Ahmed Best, the actor, ended up on a bridge nearly jumping off.
Yeah, and Jake Lloyd as well went through his issues after.
Yeah, well, he quit acting ultimately, and the fandom needs to, I think, step up and take some ownership of that. It's disgraceful.
Fans, I mean, I know this is going online, but Star Wars fans, get it together. Yeah, you guys are terrible.
Let's bully these people until they quit their jobs. One bloke nearly kills himself. Yeah, that's an appropriate way to behave.
The woman who played Rose in Last Jedi, they are so, that's terrible. That's reason enough to not be into Star Wars anymore, is because if you're associated with that fan base, that's pretty toxic.
Toxic's a good way to put it. Yeah. And not all fans, sure, but
no.
I try to enjoy things quietly on my own now, but it's very hard to do that when you talk films generally, because so much of it is big corporation stuff, and that's where we end up here, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't want to sound anti-corporation. Well, I guess I do a little bit, but it feels like it's just choking the joy out of these things. And when you had a film every 3 years and the massive successes, and then they release a new film every year, because in between episode 7, 8, 9 is the spin-off films.
You got Rogue One and Solo. And
then there were more that were then cancelled.
Yeah.
But they should all make $1 billion each, shouldn't they? It's diminishing returns. Yeah. How did you not know that before going in?
Yeah.
But you're thinking with your wallet, not with your brain at that point. So, to summarise, do the Star Wars 3 trilogies reflect in some way the films around them? I guess for the original, it was indicating what would come next, because everything was emanating it.
For sure, and I think it was also a nice capstone to that adventurous bearded wanderer filmmaker, like Coppola, Spielberg, all that sort of going out into the world and location filming and big messy shoots.
Yeah,
Apocalypse Now is a classic disaster. There's Heaven's Gate. There's all that sort of big financial risks, and so it's a good example of that kind of filmmaking.
Absolutely. That's the 70s Hollywood is a fascinating time for film, and Star Wars is just one chapter.
Yeah.
And it informs so much of what would come next. The prequels feel kind of, in some ways, out of their time. It was going more heavy CG as other films were around it.
Yeah.
But it just felt like, and the fact that it was auteur-driven meant that it felt out of place in a way.
There was nothing like the Star Wars prequels at the time. And I think at the time I thought that's largely good, because I got one good Matrix movie, but also there were other good movies at the time that looked like science fiction movies should look. They had real sets, real impact, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and I would rather see, I guess, in my final comment on the Disney trilogy is. I'm very lukewarm on it, but I did explain I was over it by the time I got in there. But it's such an indication of as you said, the Galactus homogenous kind of idea that I probably stand against more in principle. And the artistic value it's there to some extent, as we say, for the first, or especially for the second in that trilogy, I think is a really interesting artistic film.
Yeah.
The first one feels like it was trying to replicate what came before it.
It's very mercenary, but it is. That's what it needed to be.
Sure, and that was fine to an extent. And the last one was a bit of a train wreck, I would say. Yeah. But it's a good indication of the corporate world we live in, and I would take a bad trilogy by an auteur over something that's been hammered into the ground.
I don't like agreeing with you, but I think I do. The first two of the sequel trilogy are so much better than anything George Lucas made in the prequel trilogy. But, oh man, the third one, that's kind of a very good argument against corporate filmmaking. That because if you didn't have Disney pulling the levers, you just delay that movie.
I was about to say, there was an inevitability. That was either going to be the first one they did, or the second, or the third. Yeah. It was going to happen by the nature.
Okay, if Carrie's died, then let's retool. Let's take 12 months, 2 years. We'll rewrite the script. We'll work around this. But Disney's like, no, we need our $1 billion.
Yeah, before that financial quarter is done. Yeah.
So I agree with you. As much as I don't like siding with the prequel trilogy, damn, I guess I gotta.
We'll give it a bonus point after that kicking. We'll put a Band-Aid over.
Congratulations, George Lucas. You're a very good, smart boy. You did a good job.
And I do, as we said, we do respect the work he's done.
Absolutely.
And what a delightful beard he has.
Yeah. A necessary beard, yes.
I just have beard envy. That's what this whole thing was about.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've covered it all. What an interesting way to look at, I suppose, blockbusters in general. And I feel like we would have a lot more to say about other subjects in the future. So, Nate, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.